Welcome, Audrey, to the Never Too Late to Be Great podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome having you on. You recently went to the Winter Olympics, which is awesome. Yeah, I really didn't think, how many years ago was it? Like 7 years ago that we'd be sat down, doing a podcast. But yeah, so how's your kind of journey been through sport?
It's been pretty crazy. I think pretty unconventional as well. Like normally people probably go through a pretty different journey than I did, but I think it's definitely been really rewarding and I've enjoyed it so far.
Nice. So you started in doing gymnastics, I think, at the same time, or?
Kind of. So gymnastics was mainly my main sport growing up, and then skiing was kind of a side thing. I did it just every holiday, would go around 3 times a year, which is a lot more than regular people, I would say, from Hong Kong. So I was always pretty lucky with that, but never really took it seriously until around 14 when I had officially quit gymnastics, let's say. And then skiing pretty much took over.
Well, big career moves there. How was that kind of deciding from a young age? Were you kind of forced to choose between the two, or you just decided I'm going to focus on skiing?
Yeah, I think it was a lot of different factors. Gymnastics for me, it was something I did from a really young age, so I always just loved it and it was normal for me. And then around 14, I think, was when I don't know, you just hit puberty a bit early for gymnastics, I think. And then skiing just seemed like I would have more success in it. And also I was starting to get a bit burnt out because of gymnastics. So I decided that the move made sense at the time. And so, yeah, pretty much just said, all right, this is what I'm going to do. And skiing was also pretty full time. So I tried to do it at the same time for quite a bit. But then I decided that it wasn't really realistic. And then 15, I think, officially skiing just took up most of my time.
Yeah, burnout actually does exist for, I feel like, many Hong Kongers who are kind of put into it from a young age, playing sport at a semi-competitive level. How did it kind of differ, gymnastics to skiing growing up?
Yeah, skiing for me, sorry. The main thing with gymnastics was that I think everything was super routine based. And everything that I had to do was you'd go into the gym, you knew exactly what you had to do, and you're judged on like a score sheet based on what the judges think at that certain time of day. And for me, it just got a bit much. And I don't know, for skiing, it's very much objective in that you have a time. And then if you're faster or whatever, like that's your time. There's no arguing. So that's something that I really enjoyed about it. And another thing is I just spent a lot more time outdoors on snow. And I think that for me, it was really important because I think just being in the gym a lot, I don't know, it wasn't the best time. I think especially towards the end of my career, I was having some issues with like just my body, coaches, everything like that. So it made sense to go with skiing because it's where I felt like I had the most passion at the time.
Right. And growing up as well, I think some people are told, this sport helps in this sport. And like a lot of them kind of, there's kind of a knock-on effect. So, for example, I think my parents were told ballet helped with rugby and football or soccer. And so, I was kind of like, pushed into it a little bit, like gymnastics and ballet and stuff will help. And I think it probably did, with flexibility and that kind of strength and conditioning that you don't really focus on as a young like rugby player in minis. But for you, kind of how do you think they might have helped each other?
I think gymnastics for sure. A bunch of skiers still. Gymnastics was actually a part of our dryland period this summer, but it just gave me a lot of body awareness, I think, because like you're aware of every single muscle in your body when you're doing gymnastics and how like different positions affect certain things. And then on snow, when you're told to like push your hip in or like have your knees more in, you know what the coaches are talking about and you're able to integrate it more on snow. And I think that that's the main thing that really helped growing up doing gymnastics. And I also did ballet when I was younger. Wasn't my favorite thing, but I think
neither did. I literally had to, my mom had to come along with me because I wouldn't go otherwise.
I cried every session for 3 months and my mom was like, all right, this is enough. Like,
yeah, I think I did it when I was like 4 or something, like real young, and I still hated it for some reason.
But, you know, it's beautiful now. I can appreciate it now, but back then for sure. No.
Did you do any performances?
Yeah.
Which one?
Oh my God. I remember we were like in pink Leos and like the girls in the higher level were in blue Leos and you'd like look at them and you're like, nice. Oh my God, like that's where you're meant to be going.
I didn't know that was a thing. I remember like doing a performance and wearing a bumblebee costume.
Okay. I was a clown.
I think that tops it. I think that tops it. I thought, yeah, the bumblebee photo is quite an iconic one. Yeah, anyways.
Can I just picture this picture? Anyway. Okay.
I probably posted it somewhere.
Probably. That was like Halloween. I didn't know it was for ballet. But anyway.
Well, that's crazy. So how did your ski journey kind of go from there? You what, around 14 years old, you started skiing?
So I was on snow when I was 4 years old. And then growing up, I think I was always pretty decent at it compared to other like tourist skiers. And I think instructors would always tell me along the way that racing was an option if I wanted to do it. And they thought that I had potential. But I never really bought into it because I was obviously obsessed with gymnastics at the time. And then around 14, I had entered my first race in Japan. It was a really small race. I think there were maybe 7, 8 kids in the race, but it was co-ed. And then I came in second in that with no training. And I was like, all right, this is pretty cool. And then went to Austria and like did a little tourist race and won a pair of racing skis at 14. So that was pretty cool. And I was like, all right, maybe this is quite fun, you know, when you're winning things. And then I decided to just try out for the Hong Kong team. At the time, it was not established whatsoever. They had a little tryout in Japan, which was really an instructor's test, but I went there anyway. I had no idea what to expect. And then I made the team. And from there on, they started organizing a lot of trips. And then we met our current head coach for the Hong Kong team. And then from then, I was traveling maybe Jan to April every year. And then summers and Christmas. Pretty much just training and racing. And once you're 16, you enter the senior circuit. So that's when things really pick up. And then, yeah, it's been pretty crazy since then.
So you were kind of a student athlete, but in a very different way to most in Hong Kong. I mean, you were playing a winter sport or racing in a winter sport. How is that kind of adapting to that sort of lifestyle where you'd be away from school for quite a long chunk of time every year?
Yeah, I think it was so difficult. And I think sometimes people gloss over that, but it was definitely really challenging. And I think that was the main thing when I had originally started to get more serious and I would be given my race schedule for the season and certain times when I would need to be gone racing. And I didn't know if I would do it because for me, like school is pretty important, I think for my family as well. But then, and also I didn't know how CIS would take it, which is where I go to school. Because I don't think anyone has ever done this before and just taken that much time off. But I decided that like it's pretty once in a lifetime thing. I could really only do it now. So I just talked to all my teachers. Luckily, they were all very kind to me and CIS was pretty chill with me going away, even though they did have their concerns. But as long as I got the work done, they were okay. But
that's incredible that they even let you do that. Yeah. I mean, most skiers must kind of somehow work with their, school timetable.
For sure. Most skiers actually just go to full ski academies, which is what I did for a semester. But, or they just homeschool or they don't go to school. And so it was definitely pretty unconventional, I think. CIS was really good about it, but it was definitely really challenging because I had nobody to kind of look to be like, oh, they've done this before, so I can do it. But I just took it one day at a time, and it turned out all right.
So you decided to do it for the first time, and then you did it in year 10 and 11, 12.
Pretty much,
Yeah. That must have been so much pressure reaching the exam years. How did that kind of work, especially with COVID and everything going on in Hong Kong as well?
Yeah, it was crazy. I think that COVID actually helped a lot because I could kind of leave and not miss out on that much because everything was online. And that was really helpful. In terms of actually balancing academics, my day would be crazy. I'd wake up in the morning, go train, and then come back for lunch, have like our afternoon stuff, but also have to like catch up on work. And especially during our mock exams, I'd have to like sit through 4-hour mock exam periods, and pretty insane. But my friends really helped me out during that period. So shout out to them.
Yeah, no, that's amazing that you kind of maintain those social connections, which must have been quite important when you're on the other side of the world. You can imagine just looking at social media and thinking, wow, I'm missing out on a bunch. But I guess you felt like it was for the, longer term goal.
For sure.
Did you have like a moment when you thought, I'm going to go to the Olympics?
It definitely didn't come on until way later. I think that for most of my time in racing, I was like, I'm progressing quite quickly, but I'm not going to do anything with this, or I don't think it can go anywhere because of I'm like, all right, I'll do this through high school, maybe go to college, race a little bit. But then I think it wasn't until end of last season so to qualify, you have to get 5 races under 160 points. Last season, I finished the season off with a 190. So I was like, that's not too far off. It's starting to look kind of reachable. And then this summer, I started to progress really quickly just because I had the option of taking a gap year at the end. I didn't actually know at this point if I was going to take one, but I had that option. So I could kind of just not worry about school at all, which for the first time in my life, like I could do that. Yeah, insane. And then towards the end of the summer, I was talking to my coaches. I was like, realistically, what are my chances? And he was like, well, they're a bit shaky, but you could probably, if you really tried, you maybe could do it. So then I was like, all right, I think I'd regret this if I didn't try. And I think I'm really scared about vocalizing my goals to people. It's just something that happens in case like I don't meet them or something. But at the end of the day, I think that even if I didn't make it, I would have been really happy with the journey that it took to get there and just trying my hardest to actually qualify for the game. So, yeah.
I feel like sometimes kind of talking about, vocalizing your goals and stuff, it can be real scary as a, young adult or a teenager. I feel like especially because you don't want to vocalize these things and then not make it, especially because I feel like you're one of those people, that like if you say something, you're gonna go all in, so yeah, I mean, what were like the mental challenges that you kind of faced on the lead up, especially to the Olympics?
I think the main thing for me was, one, feeling like I wasn't gonna make it. That was a huge thing, but I realized I just needed to set that aside. But another thing was I had a lot of minor but really annoying injuries leading up to the games. And so my time was kind of running out, but at the same time, I knew I really wanted to like do everything that I could to really build up and actually qualify, but I couldn't really do anything because I was injured. So I think that was pretty hard mentally. And then also I had a whole thing where I just wasn't finishing races. I knew that I was skiing at the level that I needed to be skiing at, but I just wasn't putting runs together, and my coach was getting really frustrated. I was getting frustrated. Everyone was just really frustrated. Wasn't a great environment. But then I think towards the end of the season, I really pulled it together. I think it's the same thing with school with me. If there's like a deadline or something, I can normally kind of clutch it. So that's a similar thing happened with skiing this year. Yeah.
Right. Well, I think it takes more than just luck to make it to the Olympics. What kind of you know, what do you think was that defining, trait or, characteristic that you kind of maybe showed that made you that little bit better than, I guess, your competitors around you?
I think I'm really persistent, and I think I just work really hard. I was on kind of the same circuit with a lot of other girls, but we all do the same runs every single day. But I think for me, the most important thing was trying to have a run where you have an intention for every single thing that you're doing, and with that, you really maximize the time you're on snow and the time you get to train. Because with skiing, you really don't get that much time on snow. You're spending a lot of time on the chairlifts, and actually in the gates is really like maybe 10 minutes a day. You'll do 10 runs, right? That's not a lot of time. So it's really about maximizing that. And I think that that's something that I learned from a pretty young age. And I think also with gymnastics, it helped because I kind of had the same mindset. So switching to skiing, yeah.
Right, yeah, because in gymnastics, I guess, when you're in a competition and you're doing all the events, if you do badly on like the beam, you want to make it up, on the bars or something, exactly. Another bit of apparatus. So I guess for skiing, what was it kind of like? Because you talked about not finishing races, which is quite common, right, in skiing. I mean, it's just the conditions are just ever changing.
Yes. Right. And I think that you're always pushing because you need to push it to the limit to really be able to get the fastest time. But with that, you're also more like susceptible to mistakes. Right. And so that can be pretty common. And I think in terms of just not finishing, it's so mental. Because if you think it's like a minute, right? And then you start to finish. But if you've had a series of bad races and you know in your mind that like your goal is to finish, you either finish and you do really badly or you just don't finish.
That's so much pressure.
Yeah, for sure.
That you must put so much pressure on yourself to be able to do that. What do you kind of do when, say, you like make, I don't know what you call it, like a poor turn or say you're doing 10 runs in a day and like the first few maybe aren't the best. What are you kind of telling yourself on the slopes?
Right. I think the main thing is like you need to have short-term memory. So if you're like, if you're constantly worried about what you did in the past, you're not going to be able to progress. I think it's especially important in training days because you can have like the first 2 runs be really bad, but then you don't want to waste the rest of your day just thinking about those 2 runs. So for me on the lift up is when I do a lot of my reflecting and I'm like, all right, like I'm frustrated right now, but I try to focus on one thing that I can improve on because normally when I'm frustrated, it's because I'm thinking about too many things and then a bunch of things just go wrong. So if I'm trying to just concentrate on one thing and if on one run I can do that one thing better, then I'll be happy with it. And then we can like progress further. And I think that that's really important. But at the same time, sometimes it is really hard and mentally I'm just not there. And I think that that's when injuries happen too. So it's also good to be able to communicate with your coaches about that and just be able to tailor your training to how you're doing on that day.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they talk about, getting 1% better each day. And that must have been, the kind of, one of the main reasons why you just grew so exponentially in that last year in the lead up to the Olympics. How did you kind of deal with injury though? That's another massive mental challenge.
So I had injured my knee slightly and then I injured my ankle, which happens. I think the ankle was more significant because it was closer to when our season would start. And I actually had to miss the first 2 races of the season. And I had also thought that I had ruptured 2 ligaments in my ankle from that injury, but I realized that that was actually an old injury. And they said that if I got surgery, there would be no way that I could make the Olympics. So I could do it in the summer, which is now. Not sure if I will, but we'll see. And so that was the main thing. And for me, it was challenging because I was stuck in a room and everyone was going off training and I felt like everyone was getting better and I just couldn't do anything about it. But the main thing I realized was that I just needed to focus on myself and what I could do at the moment, which was go to physio, do my physio exercises, and then take it one day at a time because I didn't want to rush this at all. And I got new boots, which were tighter fitting, which was much better in terms of control and just not twisting my ankle again. And I think that being in skiing, I was super lucky too because your ankle is secure in the boot. So I could get back on snow a lot quicker than maybe some other sports. So yeah, mentally it was hard, but I think just taking it one day at a time was the main thing.
Like controlling the controllables is so important when recovering from injury. What was the like kind of going through your rehab and then hopping back on the snow? Did it like affect your mentality racing and make you more, cautious?
Yeah. It definitely affected my mentality. I was so scared, I think, first time back on snow. I remember we were doing like giant slalom that day, which was when you go a little bit faster, your skis are a bit longer, the vent that I'm less confident in.
Right.
And I was skiing and my coach was standing at the side staring like, what is this girl doing? Yeah. But I was terrified. And then she told me to go take some free runs because it made sense that I wouldn't be able to go straight back into the course. And that was also hard on me because I was like, I feel like I'm going backwards and I really need to be going forwards. I don't have time for this. But
put me on the blocks.
Exactly. It's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But then I think that after a while, my confidence did grow, I think, then higher than it was before I got injured because I started to really lay down my foundation and I felt really comfortable on my skis because of the amount of free skiing that I was doing. Right. So then when I was back in the course, we obviously took it slow, did like half a course at the beginning, and then we'd slowly progress to full length. And so that really helped. But for sure, mentality was what was influenced the most.
Right. Yeah, I mean, injury is just the worst thing ever, with a tournament coming up. I can imagine that was just so stressful. But yeah, you've talked about the mental techniques that you use before race day and on race day. What do you do to combat those stressors?
I think the main thing is visualizing. We're not actually allowed to ski the course before we race it. So we can inspect it, which is when you slide through the course and just look at it really slowly with your coaches. And then at the end of the course or at the bottom of the slope, you would just close your eyes and move your hands. It looks really funny from the outside, but I like, yeah, exactly. Like, what are they doing? But for me, it's about trying to picture everything that I saw on the course into what I had previously trained in on other training days. So the slope is never the same. The conditions are never the same. But I'll be like, okay, the slope kind of looks like the top of a mountain that I saw in like Montenegro and the bottom of how it was in like Argentina or something. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to combine them together and hopefully it works out. And so that's what I do. And also to prevent myself from getting nervous, I talk to a lot of people before the start, just like go crazy. And then when I'm at the start, I can like calm down and just don't talk to anyone. And then in the course, I kind of black out. Not the best thing, but it just happens. I push out the start. I don't really remember what I did. But I think all that prep work before makes it okay that when I push out, everything's kind of just muscle memory at that point.
Right, for sure. So much of it must be instinctive because you, as you said, never know what you're going to experience. Yeah. No two races are the same. What do you think? Because you have coaches, obviously, and it's more like an individual sport. How does that kind of play into your skiing? You talked about your coaches kind of knowing when you're in a certain zone and that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. I think I've been with our head coach for 4 years now, which is pretty a pretty long time, I'd say, with one coach. So he pretty much knows how I work. There's been a couple times when we'd like have other coaches get switched around and stuff where they wouldn't really understand my certain lead up to races and what I needed, and then that would kind of just not be the most ideal situation. So I think definitely having a coach that understands you is really important. I was really lucky too, because this year training with my coach, it was just me and the other athlete that was also at the Olympics with me. So everything was really tailored to us and what we needed on a certain day. And he was really good about kind of checking in to see where we were at on that day. And if we'd have a series of really bad runs, he'd be like, all right, calm down. Like, what do you need from me? And then we can really vocalize that. And I think that that's something that I learned this year, is just really learning how to communicate with the people that need to know what's going on, because it is individual, but so much of it is reliant on other people, because so many people are helping you get to where you end up getting to. So, yeah.
I mean, that must be so great having someone. It's so easy as an individual to kind of lock yourself up and not talk about any mental struggles or even like social or emotional or anything. And you feel like, oh, it's just me facing this. Nobody's going to understand.
Yeah.
But having someone who's kind of faced that and can also, with the technical aspect as well, it's kind of like when you read an essay.
Yeah.
And you'll read it and you're like, that's perfect.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay, right.
Exactly.
Now I'm going to leave, or I'm going to submit it now.
Exactly.
But it's so important having a coach or a mentor that can guide you, but also, point out those little minor errors.
Yeah, it's actually such a common thing for a lot of racers. People get burnt out really easily, but a lot of racers from countries where skiing isn't that popular, and maybe they're the only athlete training like full time, it gets super lonely because you're constantly going to different locations, having to be with different people. But I think, definitely finding a community within that world, even if it's just like one or two people, is super important.
Right. You must have gotten to know so many people from so many different countries. How was that socializing with them all?
Yeah, it was great. I think skiing, it is competitive in certain countries, but I think within the small nations, it's less, because everyone just wants each other to do well. And in terms of racing for the Olympics, let's say, or like qualifying, you're not really racing for a certain placing, even though it is fun when you do place, but it's more of how many seconds back you are from the leader, because that determines your points. So technically, like, you could tie with someone else and like have the same. So everyone's just building each other up. And I definitely met a lot of people. I think that growing up in CIS, we're like with the same people from a really young age. So being able to kind of go out and branch out and just meet a lot of people in a really short amount of time was super helpful in just keeping my mentality in the right place and just keeping the sport fun, because I think that's really important, just to have a fun time out there.
No, absolutely. When you're competing at that level, you definitely want to be surrounded by support, and it must be super cool to explore so many different cultures. Which countries did you kind of live in, compete in, and what did like a typical day in the life look like?
Right. So in the summers, this is our preseason. We were in Austria mainly, on the glaciers, which is where every single racer ever goes to. And so there was like 500 racers on the mountain a day, which is a really good environment to be in. You can kind of look around and see these incredible skiers go down and like really push yourself, because everyone's on same timing sometimes. But the conditions there have been getting worse. So
global warming,
environment, people.
Fix yourself.
Exactly. And then after that, we were based in Slovenia for 2 months, which was our main dryland period. And then after that, we were traveling all around Eastern Europe and all around Europe. So Italy and Bosnia and Montenegro, Croatia, all of these places. And so in the summer, we would spend a lot more time on snow, because that's when you're really pushing your body, building yourself up to get ready for the season. So we'd be out, I think, around 7 in the morning, and then be down maybe 2 in the afternoon. And then we would come back, do video analysis, all that stuff, have some recovery, play some sports with some other teams, and then pretty much just call it a day. That'd be our summer. And then in the dryland period, we'd have 5 days a week, 2 sessions a day, and then 3 days would be in the gym, 2 on the track, stuff like that. And then a lot of hiking, a lot of rollerblading. And then in season, honestly, like I did 30 races between November and like the start of January, which is, if you think about it, every other day. So we'd just race, get off the mountain, sleep as much as possible, do whatever recovery that we needed. And then, yeah.
And you were traveling at the same time.
Traveling, I think like 7-hour drives were pretty normal for us. And then we got up to 12 hours once, which was a journey. And then, yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. You guys must have, you and your, what's his name? Teammate, Adrian. Yeah. You guys must have gotten to know each other real well.
Oh, yeah. We were staying in like the same apartment for most of the year. Luckily, he can cook. I cannot. So he cooked for me for most of the time. And I did the dishes. It was a real family feel, I would say.
I hope he was a good cook.
He was a good cook. He was great. So, yeah.
How did he manage that?
Because we had no other option.
But with like nutrition.
With nutrition. So we got tested at the beginning of the year. And so we had all of our like goals and stuff. I actually needed to lose some weight. And he needed to gain a lot of weight because his metabolism is just like so fast. And he's competing with a bunch of like guys who are 6 feet tall and like built crazy. And so, but he was kind of catering the meals to my needs. And so he ended up losing weight at the end of it, which was not the best thing, but you know, it happened. You just started chugging protein shakes after that point. But for sure, he definitely paid a lot of attention. And I think that we had a supermarket right downstairs from our apartment. So it was super convenient for him. Obviously, I did not have much influence over it, but definitely it was great having him around.
For sure, that like understood all your needs. Just knew what you needed on a difficult day. Like hot chocolate, please. That's crazy. Who did you guys kind of look up to growing up?
I think being from Hong Kong, there's not many role models, I would say, who have done it before. Arabella had obviously gone to the Olympics before us. So it was cool that someone had done that, but no one had really lived in Hong Kong their whole life and made it to the Olympics. It just wasn't that possible. But I think that...
You proved them wrong.
But I think looking towards skiers that I really admired who like shared a lot of their life and just a lot of their skiing styles that really inspired me. I think that was the main thing. But also, I think growing up, I had a lot of confidence in like different things that I did. Like being in gymnastics, I think I just had great coaches that would always like build me up. And then, yeah, it is important. I think that when you're, and also skiing, like instructors that would just be so nice all the time. I think when you're actually racing, you meet a lot of coaches, especially European coaches, who are very direct and strict and being like, that was absolutely crap. What are you doing? But I think having the foundation of just being confident in yourself and your abilities and being like, all right, I can do this. I think that was a good foundation to have going into a sport where not every day is going to be the best of days.
How did you deal with the bluntness?
I was, oh my God, at the beginning, like 4 years ago. Yeah, I'd never show it, but I'd be on the slope and then like he'd just be like yelling or was like, what was that? Like blah, blah, blah. And then I'd like go up the chairlift. I'd have my goggles on. I'd just like have tears like in my goggles.
I just full on crying.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm horrible. I don't know what to do. I think as you progress, you realize that I actually prefer this style a lot more now because I was in the US for a semester and everyone was still really nice. Like, it was good, but I prefer a much more direct approach because I know he's doing it out of like love, and it's like you've seen how far you've come at the same time. So you can kind of lean back on that. You have a bad day and you're like, all right, but a bad day is still better than what I was doing last year. Yeah. So it's okay. And then, so I think it just took time, but I definitely prefer that coaching style now.
For sure. You make those adjustments quicker. Yeah. Because it's just like, fix this. Yeah. Okay. I'll go do that. How would you what advice would you give someone who maybe lacks, that confidence that you may or may not build through? I think for girls, it's really important to kind of have that like vocal support. Yeah. Just any, support in that way. What kind of advice would you give people?
Yeah, I think that trusting yourself, because honestly, like we grow up and I feel like we're so often influenced by everyone around us. But if you're like just focused on what you're doing and you're doing the very best you can, right? And obviously it's great to have outside support telling you that you're doing amazing and you're doing great. But at the end of the day, it's like you just need to fully trust yourself because you're doing everything. And I feel like me doing everything that I can in that moment gives me a lot of confidence because I know that there's nothing else that I could be doing and that I'm really like owing it to myself to perform well because obviously I'm trying the best that I can. And I think that it's really important. And another thing is just try to surround yourself with supportive people. Like obviously it's hard and not everyone is as lucky to have that type of community. But I think just having one or two people who are really in your corner and just ready to support you no matter what is really important.
That reminds me of like a boxing ring where you've got like your coach and you've got like your family and they're just like egging you on, like giving you that extra boost of kind of motivation. What do you think about when you're skiing? Like what's your kind of why, like why I compete, why I do what I do?
I think at the very basis of it is I just love the feeling of skiing and I've loved it from a really young age. And when I was like a lot younger, I would just be skiing with my brother and we'd be in the middle of a mountain. I'd be like, I'd race you. Obviously he's a lot heavier than me, so he always won. But it's okay because I think that's really what got me into it in terms of being competitive in something and like really enjoying the speed. And I think that now every day when I'm skiing and I get a certain turn really nice and then you get like a rebound off of it kind of. And especially when it's like an amazing slope and you're just like carving like from there and back, it's like the most incredible feeling. And it's not something that I can really experience in any other thing that I do. So I think constantly chasing that feeling and constantly being able to implement that in a course, I think improving is really my favorite part of it all.
Right. I mean, it's always a great feeling, like trying to replicate, that original feeling you had, like even as a kid and that kind of thing. But there must be so many girls that are, watching you, keeping up with what you're doing, looking up to you. And how was that kind of feeling? Like talking more about, I guess, the Olympics. It was super cool seeing that like Zoom of like all your family. That was so cool. I was like, whoa, your family's huge. You've got so many people. But
they all had like the Audrey shirts.
Yeah, it's so cute. How was that kind of feeling? Like you must have been getting messages from all over the world.
I actually turned my phone off the day before because I was so stressed out. Because I'm used to just racing and nobody really because who watches skiing? It's like you're there and it's cold and you watch the racer that you want to go down for like a minute maybe, and then you're just standing in the cold. Like no one's there except for our coaches and stuff. So I was really used to that environment. And I felt really stress-free. And then when I got to the Olympics, I was getting a lot of messages from like every single person I've ever met in my entire life. there was this one little girl, it was like a family friend, very distant, and she was like, "Good luck tomorrow. Don't let Hong Kong down," or something like that. And I was like, "What in the world?" Okay. Thanks for your support. And then I'd have cousins who I've never met in my entire life be like, "Good luck tomorrow. I'm your cousin." And I'm like, "Nice to meet you." But it was great. But definitely really overwhelming. So I turned my phone off and then I called my mom. And I was like, "I don't know what to do. Why is everybody paying attention?" And she's like, "Audrey, it's the Olympics." And I'm like, "I know." But then definitely that night was scary. And you get like so nervous, but you're nervous but excited at the same time. So it's just like I could not sleep all night, but I was like, I have to sleep because I need to be awake tomorrow. So then the next day, luckily I was in a much better headspace and I was like, you know what? Like, it doesn't matter what I do here. It's the Olympics. Like, just have fun. You're only going to get this one time in your life.
Yeah.
We were watching and obviously like a lot of the top skiers were skiing out. And I'm like, you know what? Like, there's nothing to lose here, right? Just try to fight, stay in the course if you can, and then see what happens.
You were so close.
I was so close, but it's okay. Yeah. But yeah.
I mean, you had like 60 people ski before you, right? On that same course. Does that damage it a bit?
Yeah. So in the Olympics, in like World Championships, World Juniors, they try to make the slopes as icy as possible. So they'll actually water it and then so that freezes overnight. And so it's pretty much a vertical ice rink so that when a lot of people go down, it'll still stay hard and the surface will still be good, which is solid. But it's also harder. You have to be a lot more aggressive on ice, obviously. And obviously the snow in China was all man-made. So that was also a bit of a different texture that we had to get used to. And so,
luckily, you really have to like dig your heels in to like carve.
Exactly. And a lot more weight on your outside. Because on ice, if you're even a little bit on your inside, you slide from the top to the bottom and you just can't stop, which is not the best thing. But yeah, so luckily the slopes were actually prepped pretty good. Obviously, there were a little bit of holes by the time I was going, but it wasn't too bad. I've experienced worse in the summers when the snow was like soft and you're doing God knows what and you have a river flowing down. Like you have no idea what's happening. Your coaches are trying to tell you to do something and you're like, I'm skiing in water, but it's okay. So yeah, you get used to it. And
I'm just trying to visualize that.
Yeah.
Just like a stream. Like sometimes you do see like patches of water and stuff.
Yeah, it's just a steady stream. And at the bottom, there's like 15 courses set for like all the different teams. And it's just like 15 streams of water coming down. And you're like, where am I? Why am I here? But yeah.
That must be so difficult.
Definitely challenging.
Yeah,
and
so you're
like,
faced with all.
Why can't I ski?
The softest of soft snow to the point where it's a literal stream to man-made ice. That
Conditions.
That's ridiculous. Yeah. What was the Olympic experience like? I mean, everyone was talking about it because you had COVID.
I did. Well, it was a very it wasn't what I expected for sure. I got there. We were in our rooms, which was pretty nice. Our beds could like go up and down. I was like, oh, this is so cool. And my teammate walked in. He's like, it's literally a hospital bed. I'm like, okay, if that's how you want to see it. But then I got taken that night because I was tested positive for COVID into another hotel. And then the very next day, thank goodness, I was negative. And but I was really stressed out because the CT values are a lot higher in China. And I was like, what if I just never get to that value ever? But luckily it was okay. And then I had to stay in quarantine where I could only train. And then all my meals were delivered to me. I couldn't really hang out with other people because I was in my room. And then also after your event, they encourage you to leave 2 days after your event finishes. So by the time I was out, which was the day of my slalom race, which it goes GS slalom. So all of my friends were like packing up to get out of there. But thank God, like I could still stay to watch my teammates because he still had his race as well as their speed skater. So I stayed for their events and I could head over to watch the half pipe, which was like 2 hours away. But it was so worth it. It was really cool. But I think when I was out, it was just really cool being in an environment where there's just so many different athletes from so many different countries and everyone's just exchanging pins, even though I couldn't go back to Hong Kong before the games. So Hong Kong didn't have any pins and we were like the only 2 people from Hong Kong. So everyone was like going crazy and they were like, we want your pins. And I was like, we don't have any. I'm so sorry. But yeah, literally. Yeah. And so, yeah. And you see like the Jamaican bobsled team and you're like, oh my gosh, like this is incredible. But
really
yeah,
is cool running.
it is. You're like, wow, there they are. Cool runnings. And Eddie the Eagle. Yeah.
He's so cute. Oh goodness. If there's one other sport that you could do in the Winter Olympics, what would it be?
I think I really enjoy watching ice skating. Like
Ice skating.
that's so cool to me.
It's
But
terrifying.
it is terrifying. And what they do is like crazy. But I think it'd be like awesome to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But
I mean, there are
I think
blades.
exactly.
They must be so sharp.
Yeah,
Like, I can just imagine them like sharpening these things.
Oh
before
God, I
races.
can't. Yeah. And like I think like tuning my skis, like we have to do them every day. But I was talking to my the speed skater, and he was like, no, after every lap, they're switching out their blades. And I'm like, what is this sport? Like, you guys are crazy.
That's wild.
But yeah. Realistically though, maybe curling.
Curling. Curling's cool.
It is cool.
I think there's a place
But
in Hong Kong you can do it.
I don't know. I really want to try. I know a lot of people that have tried and they're like, it's so fun. It
It's
looks
fun.
so dumb, but it looks so fun.
Oh
And
no,
I'm
it looks like the
yeah,
best game ever.
Yeah, no, for sure. So
Like
I
that-
want to try
that
that
person that's like
one day. Yeah,
scrubbing.
absolutely. And like aiming.
Mm,
Yeah, pretty
that's
sick.
awesome.
Mhm.
What were your like thoughts kind of on the day of your event or like the lead up as well?
The lead up. Yeah. So I think when I woke up in the morning, I was just excited, but I also had a really bad night's sleep. So I was a bit tired as well. And you have to get up ridiculously early for like races. But then I had a lot of time before my run. So I had a lot of time to calm down and get like my mind settled. So leading up to it, I remember at the very top, I just looked down and I was like, well, nothing to lose. I'm just going to try to fight as hard as I can in this run, try to stay in. That was like my goal because everyone was skiing out. And I was this is crazy, but I'll just try to stay in. And when I like pushed out the start, I pretty much blacked out. But I remember like the start, it was a steep onto a flat and it was like pure ice. And then I had like slipped on the third gate and I was like, no, this is not where it ends. Like we were not gonna like watch 3 gates. But then so yeah, recovered. Had a lot of recoveries, but I think that it was a good experience for sure. I think the most challenging thing though was like getting to the finish area and just having like so much emotion just come over you and then be pushed to do media and I'm just like crying. They were like, are you okay? Oh my God. The main message I got after like on Instagram was like, it's okay, don't cry. And I'm like, I'm okay. It was just like momentary emotions. It's all good. But yeah.
I mean, like a mix of happiness and, you know, like a little bit of frustration.
Yeah. I think, and I was so disappointed in the moment because the finish line was like right there. And I was like, you're kidding. But like in hindsight, I think I really did everything that I could in the moment. And things happen. So yeah.
Were you freaking out on the chairlift up?
A little bit. Because you're not allowed to ski the course, right? So then you just look at it and it always like it's the Olympics. So you're like, oh, this like looks so intimidating. And you're going up and you have the chairlift was so long and so cold. And you're just going up. It was like on race day it wasn't this cold, but it got to like -30. And there had like ridiculous wind because I don't know why the wind in China is really something else. But anyway, but I had so much time to just think on the chairlift. Luckily, I was riding up with one of my good friends, so I could just talk to her, and we were like distracting each other, talking about like God knows what, anything but skiing at the time. And then at the top, yeah, pretty much got in the zone.
Right, yeah. I mean, I think I would like actually pee my pants going up. Like, it's just so much time to just think about like that one thing. Yeah. How do you guys warm up in skiing?
So it depends when you're going. So we'll kind of time it, maybe 20 racers before you'll head up, and then at the start you're all out, and then you'll have your jacket and everything, but then maybe around 10 racers, 15 racers before you'll strip to just your race suit. And then there's a lot of leg swings that go on, a lot of random things. I don't know. You'll like, I like to, what do? I do a lot of squats before I go just to get my legs like quick. Slalom, you like, do a lot of like quick feet things because it's like a lot faster than let's say GS. Right. And GS is like,
so it's like get feeling in your toes.
Exactly.
So
yeah, it is really cool. So it's like whatever you can do, you're like doing. And then like coaches are trying to get their athletes as warm as possible. And you're like, I don't know, man.
How do they do that?
They slap you a lot. Can you feel this? And you're like, no. Yeah, there was a race in Bosnia. I pushed out and I could not feel my feet or my hands. And literally 2 gates went by and it was just like this.
Just like frozen.
Yeah, and like I'm just like go inside. Like I don't even want to talk about this. And I was like, thank you. But yeah.
Wow.
Not every race
doing that like in the Olympics.
So they're like, what is this girl doing?
Just like pizza down.
I can't deal with the cold.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's crazy. How did the race timings work?
Yeah, so we'll have our first run. I think it starts around like 8 maybe. And then everyone will go. Obviously at the Olympics, it's like quite a long time. And then between the runs, there's like 3 hours, which is a long time. And so
how do you get to that? You have to finish
You have to finish the first race to be able to race in your second race. And so like all races, top 30 will get flipped. So if you come in 30th, you can go first in your second run, which it makes it more fair in terms of like conditions because
so
they get the best conditions to try to
counterintuitive.
To try to catch up to whoever comes first. But because like the first place people, like the first top 10, let's say, because the top 15 girls, they're like, they have the best points. So no matter what, they always go like the first 15. So they have the best course going down. And then let's say if you're like 45th and then you're going down 5th and then you come in 30th after first run. So then you'll have a better course second run, if that kind of makes sense. Yeah. So, and then it goes 30 all the way to first. And then everyone else goes after 30th, after the top 30 go. And so that's how it regularly. Exactly. Or no, because then you're like probably a couple seconds out. But like, yeah, if you're 30th, you're in a really good position. Let's say if there's like 80 people in the race or something like that. So yeah, that's how it works.
And it's the best joint time, like
yeah. So the winner's best combined times.
So the first race does actually matter a lot.
Yes, it does actually matter, but it's like such a mind game because you're like trying to push, but then you're like, I have to finish this run in order to get to my second run. Right. You know, so it's like, what do I? Yeah, but
that sounds like an a real big struggle.
So for me, I always do better on my second run because I'm like, all right, like I made it. I know the course. I can like go down better.
So that's so weird. I thought that like originally the second race would just be the decider. You know, that was the only time that mattered.
Yeah. No.
But it's weird that the first run matters too. What do you do when you like don't make a certain time?
I get mad. But I think realistically, I think with skiing, it's different from like, let's say running, where you have a consistent track. And then if you have a certain time, like, you know, like you can make that. But with skiing, like the course is always different. And then the slope is always different. So there's not a set time. So the way you know that you're improving is kind of like comparing your time to other people.
Okay.
That's why it's so important to train with people who are like maybe better than you or at the same level, because then you can really compare times and just like progress in that way. But when I don't make whatever it is that I want to make, I have a bad day. I do get really frustrated. But I think that it's at the start of the day. I'm like, all right, there's still the rest of the day to make this better. But let's say I'm not happy with certain races. Because we have so many races in a row, I try not to let it affect my next race, you know, because it's a new day and then you just try to do it all over again. And hopefully it turns out a bit better.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I can imagine that frustration after a race, but it's kind of interesting that your mindset is kind of set on self-improvement when it could be so like toxic almost, because you're always just comparing yourself to the skiers around you. And I can imagine on the circuit you're racing similar people, so if you have the same person like beating you all the time and having that top time and you're like, oh, I'm like 5 seconds off or something, or 3 seconds off.
Affected me a lot at the end of the season.
Right.
I think because at the beginning of the season, I was progressing so quickly. And there were like girls that like would beat me last season by like 10 seconds and I was beating them by like 3. Wow. And then I was like, this is amazing. I'm sure it didn't feel great for them. But for me, like in the moment, it felt really good. But then after the Olympics, I don't know what happened. Something happened. But I was going to these races and like girls that I was beating by like 5 seconds, I was suddenly like losing. And like in Montenegro in December or whatever, I'd like podium at every single race. And then at the end of the season, I was like barely making anything. And then in Serbia, I came like second last. I was like, what is happening? This is terrible. What's going on? And so it is challenging. And I think the main thing is like, you could be trying to change something in your skiing and it could feel better, but the time is not better. And that's like the most frustrating thing for me. But then
you can't tell how fast your time is until you like look at it at the end. Right?
Exactly. And like, that's why doing timing. But then at the same time, like coaches are like, no, like you're skiing better. But even if your time is worse, you need to trust the process and like continue to progress in this direction. And I'm like, but I'm slower. This doesn't make sense. But so that really frustrated me. But I think that at the end of the day, it's like trust the people around you that they know what they're talking about, and also trusting yourself because you know what feels right, what feels good. So yeah, it's hard, but I mean, I think it's the way that you improve the most is just by focusing on yourself rather than other people.
Right. Yeah, no, of course. What kind of was it like starting racing later than other people?
Oh, yeah. That was so challenging for me because I like being good at things. And if I'm not good at it, I feel like I'm only competitive in things that I'm good at. Does that make sense? If I'm not going to be good, I'm like, oh, I don't want to. Yeah. But so most racers start when they're 8 years old. That's just the typical age to start. But a lot of them do get burnt out by the time they enter the senior circuit, and they last maybe a year or two. So I think in that sense, I had an advantage in starting much later. But I think that the main thing that it really helped me was that I was entering these different environments where I was like the worst person there. So I'd be in like Eastern Europe coming in last, or I'd be in the US and I'd like be doing like not very good. And then I think that's where like having confidence from when I was a kid like really kicked in, because I was like, okay, I'm not doing great now, but I think like these people have been doing it like much longer than I have been, and I genuinely really enjoy like the sport and what I'm doing. So it will come, because I just believe that it will come. And especially like I knew that I had a really good foundation for skiing because I spent so much time free skiing, if that makes sense. And not a lot of racers do that because they just go straight into gates, and maybe their foundation isn't as solid. So I was like, okay, I think I can rely on having a good foundation, and that I can now progress and build up from this and know that I started at a good place. So I think that that really helped. And also being 14, 15, you're more mature in that when coaches give you feedback, you actually register and apply it, rather than when you're younger and they're like, do this. And you're like, oh, what am I doing? But yeah, so it was challenging at first for sure. But I think at the back of my mind, I knew that I could be more competitive than I was.
Where does that kind of drive come from?
I think I just wanted to ski good. I think that was the main thing. I would like look at racers and I'd be like, yeah, I'm not there yet, but I think I can be. And I know that I can be. And I really enjoy the feeling of skiing. So I think that if I continue with this, I will be able to get the feelings that I want to get out of my ski and be able to go to certain races and actually like get the results that I want to get. And so, yeah.
I don't want to lose. I want to come first. I mean, that's where like kind of a lot of the success stories come from. You know, people talk about the lows in order to reach the highs. But I mean, a lot of people would kind of want to give up on, you know, doing IB alongside a competitive sport. I'd say just in general is just probably the worst match made ever. Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy the amount of content that you need to learn over 2 years, and then to do that alongside a sport where you're out of class for long periods of time. How did that kind of work in, you know, the support systems around you and all that?
Yeah, I think it was definitely really scary to take that leap, because obviously no one really does that. And then I think CIS is really good in that we have teachers who I feel like genuinely just care about us and care about us doing well in things. And also, I think we grew up in a friend group where everyone was so passionate about something, you know? So school, whilst it was a big focus, it was never really the main thing that like took over. So I think that that was really good in that I was like, okay, like school is a big part of my life, but it doesn't have to be like every part of my life. And IB's hard, but I have teachers that are willing to help me if I really want to do this. And I have friends that will be willing to send me their study guides if I need it, or like really help me out in that sense. And I think a lot of people would like, I would talk to a lot of teachers. I talked to like Miss Dolman, who's like the head of secondary, and she was like, listen, it's going to be really difficult. Like, really think about what you want to do. Is this something that is realistic?
I think every head of secondary or like IB or something says the same thing to athletes, because they want to bring out the best of you in your academics and sport. Like, I'm sure you had big goals for your academics as well.
I did have big goals, and I was like,
is that from a young age?
No, I was such a terrible student when I was
like, were you like, I want to go to Harvard when I'm old?
No. I was like, I want to pass this test. Are you kidding me? So, but as I got older, I was like, I really like to learn. I think that's the main thing. I really like to learn. But in terms of like being in school, but also doing my sport, I was like, is there any possible way where I could do both? And Miss Dolman was like, technically, yes. Really hesitant. And I was like, all right, I think that I'm just going to try to make it work. Yeah. And then I
just remember a similar conversation, and it's making me cry.
a lot. of all-nighters when I came back. So I'd go off skiing. And I think that that's something that also kind of hindered my process while I was at school and why I was able to progress a lot more quickly on this gap year is just that when I was skiing, when I'd get off the mountain, I'd be like worried about school and catching up. And I think it's really challenging because it's like completely two separate lives, but you're trying to do them together. And so when I got back, I definitely freak out a little bit because I'd sit in the classroom and listen to my teachers and I'd have no idea what
7 topics behind.
I'm like, this is not where we were when I left, but it's okay. But then I realized that if I took the time to really study things outside of school, because I feel like in school, you have to do a lot of like presentations and there's a lot of things that kind of just fill time, which is also important to develop your other skills.
I love projects.
I know you do. Projects are great.
I hated everything outside of that.
Yeah, and they're wonderful. But in terms of content-based things, I could kind of catch up, like if I just spent the time outside of school. So then, exactly. And then, since it is a sport that I can only really be doing when I'm on snow, when I'm in Hong Kong, I can really just purely focus on my academics and try to get it to the standard that I want to get it to. And teachers were really good about like giving me a lot of tests before I left so that like I didn't have to take them when I was gone or like do a bunch after. And so it was definitely hard, but I think I had a great support system that helped me out a lot. Yeah.
This was great at managing your different kind of the different aspects of your life. But I mean, it's just so stressful going from, one just like competitive skiing, like racing, and then you go to school and then that's stressful. And then, it's probably subconsciously kind of ticking away.
It's so well. Like weird. Cause when I'm at school, I'm like skiing is so much easier. I just so much rather just be doing that. And then when I'm skiing, I'm like, school is so much easier. I just so rather just be doing that. So yeah.
I mean,
it's definitely a weird balance.
Teachers must have not really understood at all what you were doing.
And then
suddenly you went to the Olympics a year later and they were probably like, I taught Audrey King.
When I was at school, I was like asked to leave and they're like, you're leaving to go ski? And I'm like, yes.
That's the one. For how long?
3-4 months.
4 months. They just like give you like 20 dictations in 1 week.
So odd.
Wow. Yeah. No, I mean, I remember, I'll never forget that, that CIS, what was it? CIS email that was sent to the whole school and all like the alumni and everything about you. And it was just so personal, so sweet. It just showed how much care kind of, came from the school. Even if it wasn't understanding, there's definitely a lot of care.
There was a lot of care, for sure. But yeah, no, like what other school would let me do this? Probably not a lot. Yeah, so.
No.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely the first Winter Olympian from CIS. I think Olympian as well, that's an
You'll be the second.
Feat. Oh no, stop. Don't put that pressure on me. Please. Yeah. I mean, it's just like so much goes into it, for a short race. As you say, is 1 minute long and then it's over. How does it kind of feel after the race, other than enjoying the Olympic, cuisine that you enjoyed?
It was really hard. I think after the Olympics, I definitely had a lot of struggles just mentally. I was really checked out after the Olympics because the whole year I was working towards this goal and then I had achieved it, but then I still had to finish the season off. And next year, I'm not sure. I'm probably not going to be skiing next year. I think I'm just going to focus on college a little bit. So I was still going to these races, but I didn't know if I would still be like what I was improving for or what I was going to these races for. And like suddenly so many people were like talking about you at the Olympics and then you go somewhere else and then you're still like, I still couldn't see my family because I was still traveling around Europe. So for sure, it was just It was really difficult, and performance-wise, I wasn't doing my best, I think, in terms of, I think just mentally, it wasn't great. And my teammate who had been with me all season went back to school because he like took 2 gap years. He's like, I need to go back to school. So he went back to school, and I was like traveling with just me and my coach, which was really hard. And a bunch of my friends who I had made prior, they either didn't make it to the Olympics and went to school, or they made it and they were like somewhere else. So I was just not in a great place mentally, but I think that's when you kind of try to figure yourself out outside of skiing, because like for the past year, skiing was my life and it was what I woke up to do every single day. And then at that point I was like, okay, I don't know what my goals are really now. So yeah, I think it's a transition period for a lot of people. I was talking to other athletes who are also there, and they had similar issues.
I know it's definitely so important for athletes to talk about the kind of post Olympic or like kind of big event time, because you do reach such a high, and then suddenly reality kind of hits. And so, yeah, it's definitely something that I think needs to be more widely addressed. Definitely not ignored, because so many mental struggles can come from it. And then you realize again that you need those supportive kind of networks to keep you standing almost. For sure. Yeah. I mean, thanks a bunch for joining me on the Never Too Late to Be Great podcast. It's been awesome having you on and kind of discussing some of the highs and lows that your career has brought so far. And I'm super excited to see where it's going to go next.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, great talking.
Cheers, bud.